Hi, how's everyone out there doing? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager, Life is the Project and the Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals. Today is a very special edition of 24 Authors in 12 Hours. We are featuring different authors from Free Agent Press. It's a veteran-owned organization by James Woosley, and so many just diverse and different authors that we're talking to today. And right now, I am talking to Lou, whose book is featured about Mount Rushmore, and I don't want to give too much of Lou's book away. So Lou, I'm gonna put your ticker on the bottom here. So if people want to, they can go to Lou's website and check it out. And it is about Mount Rushmore, how Mount Rushmore was created, and Lou's grandfather. Lou, can you share the story with us?
Sure. My grandfather, Luigi del Bianco, was an immigrant from Italy, and somehow through fate, managed to come under the employ of Gutzon Borglum, who was the designer of Mount Rushmore, and became Gutzon Borglum's granite expert. And in 1933, Borglum hired my grandfather to have the most important job on the mountain, and that was refining the faces as the chief carver. This was something only a trained stone carver could do, and my grandfather had that responsibility for several seasons. Think of him as kind of like a relief pitcher. You know, the roughing was done, and then he would come in and do the refinement of expression. Unfortunately, he was never mentioned in the most definitive book on Mount Rushmore, called The Carving of Mount Rushmore. So my uncle and I spent 6 visits to the Library of Congress, and we unearthed incredible documents talking about not only how important my grandfather was, but that he had quit several times because of bullying and harassment and the powers that be not wanting him there. And it was Gutzon Borglum's defense of my grandfather and literally paying part of his salary out of his own pocket to keep him, because he needed him so desperately to give the faces the humanity that you see in them today. And so my book, Out of Rushmore Shadow, is split into 3 parts. It's his amazing immigrant journey, his time at Rushmore with all of these amazing documents from the Library of Congress, plus incredible photos never seen before. These are from our private family collection of my grandfather working on Mount Rushmore. You could see one in the back that's on the cover of the book. And then the 25-year roller coaster ride that reads like a Grisham novel, where we had to overcome many obstacles with the National Park Service to get him the recognition that he deserves. And I'm grateful and thankful to say that the National Park Service has officially recognized him as the chief carver, where for the past 80 years that has not been the case.
Yes, and Lou, it's also my understanding the Library of Congress has also done a piece on your grandfather?
They have. And I believe there is a link to go to. I have the link. I've copied it onto my email. Amy, I don't know if there's a way that you could share that link with your
I'm going to share that into the comments with everyone.
Awesome. That yeah, they did an amazing piece on our research into my grandfather, and what an incredible resource the Library of Congress was in getting him recognized. If it weren't for these documents, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and I'm a really big fan of the Library of Congress, and if you're ever let me know, and I will certainly arrange for you to have a tour out there. As you know, I have a very close friend who works for the Library of Congress, and shamelessly promoting them right now, but the work they do is so absolutely tremendous. Lou, we had mentioned that you might want to share some of these photos. Do you want me to go into the sharing mode now?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do first is just to kind of encapsulate the whole story.
Perfect.
Of my father. I have a CBS Sunday Morning did an incredible piece, and it kind of tells, the whole story. So yeah, why don't we go into sharing mode, because I have that video set up now, ready to go.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and go into sharing mode, and here you go. And you should be able to share now this video with the audience.
Okay, great.
The man depicted here was arguably a cut above the other stone carvers he worked with, but acknowledging that required a rewriting of the history of one of our nation's most beloved monuments. Jim Axelrod takes us to the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Mount Rushmore's designer, Gutzen Borglum, once said he hoped the faces would remain unchanged until the wind and rain alone shall wear them away. The monument, carved into granite, was designed to be as enduring as it was inspiring.
And the team that created this memorial exemplifies the perseverance of the American spirit.
Which is why this ceremony held yesterday was so remarkable, as the National Park Service marked a change at Mount Rushmore.
3, 2, 1.
A small but significant revision to the story of its creation. 48 years after his death, an Italian immigrant named Luigi del Bianco was officially recognized as Mount Rushmore's chief carver.
You know what, Amy?
Yes.
I accidentally played the short version. Let me bring this back and go to the right spot because there's more.
The man
Yeah, excuse me.
depicted here
Sorry
was
about that.
arguably
That is no problem. And the nice thing about interviewing is, I mean, the key is that we're going to get your message out there, Lou, and the importance of your grandfather finally being recognized for this important project.
Great, I
One of our
appreciate
nation's most
that.
beloved monuments. Jim Axelrod takes us to the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Mount Rushmore's designer, Gutzen Borglum, once said he hoped the faces would remain unchanged until the wind and rain alone shall wear them away. The monument, carved into granite, was designed to be as enduring as it was inspiring.
And the team that created this memorial exemplifies the perseverance of the American spirit.
Which is why this ceremony held yesterday was so remarkable, as the National Park Service marked a change at Mount Rushmore.
3, 2, 1.
A small but significant revision to the story of its creation. 48 years after his death, an Italian immigrant named Luigi del Bianco was officially recognized as Mount Rushmore's chief carver. So there he is, performing a little surgery
Yeah, it is plastic surgery.
on Thomas Jefferson.
It's really granite surgery.
As Luigi del Bianco's grandson Lou explained to us, the chief carver was the master craftsman in charge of refining the expression in the faces.
So the twinkle in Lincoln's eye,
Yep.
or Jefferson's lips.
Yep.
That's Luigi del Bianco's work.
Yes.
Since Rushmore's completion in 1941, the 400 laborers had always been saluted as a group. But for the last 30 plus years, the Del Bianco family had been making the case Luigi wasn't just part of the crowd.
If we're looking at Rushmore, what of Luigi del Bianco's work am I seeing that separates him out and makes him deserving of his own plaque?
Well, when people tell me their impression of the faces, they say that there's a humanity. There's a humanity in that granite. And I'm convinced that my grandfather helped bring that humanity out.
Trained in Italy as a stone carver, Luigi del Bianco came to America in 1908 at the age of 16, settling eventually in Port Chester, New York, where he opened a business.
So in Port Chester, New York, there are headstones carved by the same man who did Rushmore?
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times an older person in town would say, "Can you believe it? The man who carved the president's faces carved my mother's headstone." Unbelievable.
Lou Del Bianco grew up knowing all about his grandfather's special role at Rushmore.
What do we have in here?
And those are about 75 documents from the Library of Congress.
Including testimony from Gutzen Borglum.
He is worth any 3 men I can find in America for this particular type of work here and now.
This is Borglum's writing.
Oh, yeah.
But nothing Lou showed the Park Service would change the narrative, at least not until Cam Shawley took over the regional office in charge of Rushmore.
You know, there's a pay sheet that has his name, Chief Carver, $1.50 an hour.
The more Shawley read of what Lou sent him, the more he realized the story of Rushmore needed rewriting.
I found myself wondering if we should change course here.
So Shally dispatched a couple of National Park Service historians to Lou's basement in Portchester.
They went through the book that I showed you. By the 4th page, one of the historians said, "Well, you sold me. Let's go have lunch."
And after years of making Luigi's case, the official policy was overturned.
We have Luigi Del Bianco in that visitor center. There are pictures of him, his name's in there. We just haven't called him Chief Carver, and now we will.
Well, now we all know Gustav Borglum, of course, but he didn't do it alone. There were about 400 people who helped him.
The decision made at headquarters may take a little while to filter down to the tours. We got this recognition coming to Luigi Del Bianco. It's kind of a neat part of the story, isn't it?
I don't know that part of the story, so I can't say.
Are you going to have to brush up on Luigi?
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
But Lou Del Bianco isn't concerned, knowing he's got history on his family's side, and now a plaque to prove it.
Thank you for letting me show that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And definitely important thing. I can tell you're very proud of your grandfather. And you mentioned to me the impact this had. And how old were you when you found out about your grandfather and his work on Rushmore?
Well, when I was a little boy, I used to visit my grandfather, and we had a special connection because I was his only grandson. I grew up with 6 sisters and no brothers, which is a story of itself.
I imagine there'll be a second book.
Yeah, exactly. So I was his namesake, and in the Italian culture, that's a very big deal. So he used to show me a bust that he carved of himself, and I was just amazed at the talent of this man, even at 5 or 6 years old. And he passed away, and 2 years later, I find this old Rushmore brochure. And I asked my mother what it is, and she says, "Well, Grandpa was the chief carver. He finished the faces." And, I was a really shy kid. I didn't talk much. Probably having 6 sisters might have contributed to that. I don't know. But I said, "Can I show my class at school?" This is something I never would have done, but I was filled with such pride that I remember standing in front of that classroom and with that pamphlet and saying, "I want to tell you about my grandpa." And that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. I've been telling everybody about my grandpa through a one-man show that I've been performing where I become him because I am an actor and a storyteller and a singer. And with this book, I'm telling everyone about my grandpa 50 years later.
Such a tremendous service that your grandfather performed for us. We're about halfway through this segment, and one of the things I do want to make sure that I make everyone aware of as they watch each of the different interviews today is that my books are available all day for free Kindle download. That's The Project Manager, Life is a Project, and The Consummate Communicator. But for any of the print books, 10% of all proceeds are going to be going to the Wounded Warrior Foundation in honor of this being Veterans Day. And I'm also putting a link into the chat if you are inclined to volunteer or to donate to this organization. Absolutely wonderful organization that supports veterans. And one of the reasons that I'm together today with Lou and who connected us is James Woosley. And James owns Free Agent Press. He is a veteran. It's a veteran-owned organization. And I'd like to ask you, Lou, what was your experience like working with James, and how did you get this book from a concept into print?
Well, my good friend Anthony Fasano teamed up with me to publish this book, and Anthony had worked with James on his own books, and so Anthony highly recommended James to me, and we were really under the gun. We had to get this book published in time for the ceremony at Mount Rushmore in 2017. So we put James in a really rough position. He had to work nonstop to put out a quality product, and he went above and beyond, and the whole time he was nothing but a gentleman, accommodating, patient. There were times when I cringed, like, "Oh, James, do you think would you mind just making?" "Yeah, no problem. Nothing was ever an issue. He was heaven, and and under trying circumstances. Without getting into any details, we had kind of we're under a rush to get this done.
You're a rush to Rushmore.
Yeah, rush. There you go. Boom. So he was not only a consummate professional, but a gentleman, and very supportive of this project. By the way, I could tell that he was inspired. He was really into it.
That is really, really wonderful to hear.
Yeah,
So
2 thumbs up for James.
thank you so much. For those of you who want Free Agent Press, absolutely wonderful organization to work with. And I'll be speaking with James again at 7:30. He also did an interview at 8 o'clock. If you want to check out that interview, it's recorded. And of course, all these interviews are recorded, and you can check them out either on YouTube, Facebook, and they'll also be reposted with links to the books on my page, which is amyshamilton.com. So the 24 Authors in 12 Hours series came about because during COVID, we don't have book festivals. And one of the things I spoke about with my fellow authors is really missing that experience of being able to pick up a book and flip through it and talk to the authors at these events and find out like what inspired them. And, Lou, hearing the video for your grandfather, I mean, really, really inspirational. And you can see what inspired you. And my question for you is, what's your advice to others who maybe want to write but are still afraid to?
Oh, I would just say go for it and make as many mistakes as you can. It's the only way to grow. I'm sure we've all heard this. I'm sure we've all heard this lesson before. It's just hard to put into practice. The fear of failure, the fear of hitting those obstacles. Not only did I experience a lot of obstacles trying to get my grandfather acknowledged on Mount Rushmore, I ran into many obstacles, as a writer, but I kept working through them. And I'm not someone who is an expert on writing, so I'm not going to pretend to be. But the only thing I can tell you is that once you get over that hump and start writing, you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish. Don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid to fail. And your grandfather obviously wasn't. I mean, this story of like where he was hired and fired and these kinds of things. I mean, this is truly a challenge. And I think COVID is a time too when people are struggling with their business models. People are struggling with, what to do because the world economy has changed and the world has changed. Yeah. And how do you think your grandfather's, the lessons would apply to people today?
Well, to me, it's all about perseverance. It's all about perseverance. My grandfather was one of many immigrants who came to this country hoping for a better life. He rode in steerage on that boat for 3 weeks, came to America, worked in Barrier, Vermont as a stone carver, went back to Italy when World War I broke out. He was a wounded warrior. He was a veteran, wounded 13 times in the Italian army during World War I. And brought that grit back with him to the States, worked for Borglum, and I think his time in the service and in the military served him well, with the challenges of working 500 feet above the ground, with holding a 40-pound drill, face filled with dust, sun on his back, working in a scaffold that was shaky, risking your life every day, and dealing with the issues of never getting paid, and those other challenges and the way he was treated by certain people. He persevered. And he was a constant inspiration to me. Whenever I hit obstacle upon obstacle, I just thought of him and what he went through. And I thought, I'm going to do this for my grandpa.
And I think that's such a good point is right now this concept of perseverance. Your grandfather persevered. He persevered through so much. And then you persevered to get him the recognition that you felt that he deserved. And right now during COVID, when people are struggling, when people are like, I'm not sure what to do, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it, this really sends out a strong message of perseverance and going through the challenges.
Yeah, because my grandfather, this was the Depression, this was the 1930s. My grandfather was away from his family for many, many months at a time, and he needed to put food on the table. He needed to keep his family going. And so it was a real challenge for him. Most of the people that worked on Rushmore lived in Rapids, lived in Keystone. They were with their families. My grandfather was totally alienated in many ways. And his only lifeline to his family was to get that Western Union money to them. so that they could survive.
Such an important message. And right now I'm looking at your website. What kind of services do you offer? What can people find when they go to LuigiRushmore.com?
Well, I'm an actor, singer, and storyteller. Most of my work is with young people and children, and that's been most of my career. I started out as an actor and didn't like the business at all. And I thought, how can I kind of recreate myself so I could be in charge of my own destiny, artistically and financially? And so I started working with children and started creating my own characters, my own educational programs that I thought would inspire children with literacy, with character education, and I've never looked back. So I'm really happy to say that I've been able to be a working artist, but calling the shots, so to speak. And then I started working with performing for adults again. And so if you go to LuigiMountRushmore.com under the Luigi Legacy, you'll see that I offer a performance as my grandfather combined with a book signing. Not easy to do right now with COVID. I have been Zooming quite a bit, and it's been worth it, well worth it, because I've been able to reach out to groups that I wouldn't be able to get to, in different parts of the country. So if any group is interested in having me perform for them, they'll not only get a talk about my book, but they'll get a performance. They'll see me bring my grandpa to life. So it's a unique program as far as an author book talk would go.
No, I think that's so great. And that kind of goes into the book festival kind of thing that we're missing right now, that it'd be wonderful to be at a book festival where you're on a stage in front of a couple hundred people, doing this reenactment. And unfortunately now we're in this very different environment. But the fortunate thing is instead of just being in front of a few hundred people, this gets recorded, it goes around the globe, and it gets shared. And so it's really opening up the concept of this global community, and we're not limited by geography anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Can I give a quick shout out to someone?
Certainly.
This is my late Uncle Silvio. This is one of his dog tags. He was a wounded warrior in World War II. He went on the submarine chasers in the Navy in the European theater, and I was very, very close to him. And I'm so proud of his service, and I thought it was appropriate that I bring that up because I'm proud of your service, Amy, and everybody who's listening and watching. And all of you, I think, are a lot of your authors veterans?
So it's kind of a combination. Most of the ones from James are not veterans, but supporting James and being a veteran-owned small business. There are several veteran authors, though, that are also supplementing. This morning we had Todd Simmons, we had Barry Overton, we have C. Marshall Turner coming up later. We're having Michael Sloan, some absolutely wonderful authors who are also veterans, and some very unique stories behind them. One of the ones that I think is really fascinating and promoting at 6 is Michael Sloan. He wrote a young adult book. It's kind of, I look at it and I always call it a crossover between Harry Potter and Narnia kind of thing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And it's really super fun. But the behind the scenes is he wrote this book as an escape while he was serving in Afghanistan during the war.
Get out! He wrote it while he was in combat. I mean,
exactly. So just a really powerful story, powerful author. One of the authors, also one of James's authors, featured later on today. She wrote her book, Beth Underwood, about some National Guardsmen, and they're in her local community, and unfortunately, not all of them made it back from Iraq. So. Powerful stories. You have a powerful immigrant story. So many different authors, different messages. And I think kind of the word that I want the audience to get is we all have a story within us. Yes. And we all have something worth sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes the full story needs to be told. And that's what I tell children when I perform for them, and adults. History doesn't always tell you the whole story. Sometimes you have to go and find the truth for yourself. And I got to do it for somebody I love. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for sharing about your uncle. I was going to save that for the end.
Sorry, Amy.
No, it's fine. But you hit on such an important point. It is Veterans Day, Wounded Warrior Project. If you know a veteran out there who's alone, who maybe this is a difficult day, maybe they've lost, comrades in these war zones, reach out to them today. And the second message that you've touched on, Lou, and it was brought up a lot in my last segment with Erica White, is the joy and the love of reading for children. Teaching children that importance of reading when they're young is what's going to give them that perseverance as they go through life.
Absolutely. I always tell children, when you read a book, you learn about the world and you learn about yourself. That's my motto for kids.
Absolutely true. And even when it's fiction books, there's still so much that you can get out of it. It's the building of the imagination and, having worlds that go even beyond the physical world that we live in today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lou, thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we did not get a chance to cover today?
Yes, if people are interested in the book, Out of Rushmore Shadows, available on Amazon.com. It's available on BarnesandNoble.com. And if you'd like a personally signed copy from me, I can send you an order form. Lou@findlou.com. Lou@findlou. In other words, if you want to find me on the web, Lou@findlou.com.
Lou@findlou.com. Okay, and that's also in the comments as well.
All right, great. And I'll send them a simple order form that explains everything. So those are the three ways to get the book.
Wait, I missed your @ Lou@findlou. I spelled it out. How funny.
Lou@findlou. F as in Frank, INDLOU.com.
Oh no, the problem is I actually spelled out the word @ instead of the @ sign.
Oh, that's okay. Well, you fixed it, and that's the important thing.
No problem. Thank you so much, Lou. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your grandfather's service of your uncle. And thank you so much for being here today to promote James. And James, thank you. I see you posted in the comments. So really appreciate this wonderful, amazing author community that we're sharing with today.
Thank you.